of the Friday grind. I have my coffee right here. I am using this platform for the very first time. This is my first ever live stream, so gonna see how this goes. It might take me a little bit to figure this out. So I've been wanting to do this live stream for a while. I just haven't found the time, haven't made it actually happen, but this week we're making it happen. It's my first day of officially being a 29-year-old, and what better day to do this than today? Um, I have my coffee. The reason I wanted to call this the Friday grind is because I am a coffee connoisseur. I love my coffee, quite picky about my coffee. And I thought it would be fun to kind of incorporate something else that I enjoy that also somewhat has to do with work, helps us be more productive. I know the thing I look forward to in the morning is my morning cup of coffee. So today we have a vanilla mint latte, and this is vanilla extract. It's not extract though. Vanilla paste, I think, from the farmer's market. It's like an artisanal vanilla place, and then fresh mint from the garden that my husband actually brews the espresso over the mint, so it like infuses into the coffee, and it is just so good. And specifically in this cup. I don't know what it is, but I have to have my iced drinks in this cup. Yeah, it's just really good. And the coffee beans that we use are Purity coffee. I'm also kind of a health wellness snob. And coffee is actually known for being moldy, just because of the way the beans are grown. And if you're a gardener, you might understand this. But just like when you harvest it, the water kind of makes the coffee beans moldy. So it's really important to get organic, pure coffee. So Purity coffee is the way to go if you're looking for some really good coffee beans. But today I wanted to talk all things analytics engineering. Let me just check in on some things in LinkedIn. All right, talking all things analytics engineering. So, what is analytics engineering? I feel like I've been getting a lot of questions about this lately as new people have been finding me, specifically from Instagram and TikTok, which I've recently started creating content for. And people are just wondering, what is the difference between analytics engineering and data engineering and data analyst and all the data careers out there, because sometimes it can feel overwhelming. Like there's so many different career choices, career options. Sorry. I am just looking at. Okay, so analytics engineering, I like to think that it's a mix between being a data analyst and a data engineer because it requires the technical expertise similar to that of a data engineer, but you also have to be able to interact with the business and answer business questions and kind of figure out what the business needs and understand how things work. Whereas data engineering, a lot of times, is just like purely the technical stuff. Like you're not actually solving like the root of a business problem or using data to solve it. You're just making sure that the data is readily available, so either the analytics engineer or the data analyst can then use it. Oh, we have a little guest. Hey, P. Hey, baby boy. This is Play-Doh. You can tell I'm a math nerd, or because his name is Plato, right? You're a little mathematician. You're a little mathematician. So, analytics engineering requires a lot of communication skills. I think that's one of the things that maybe is like the most confusing, because it's not just all technical stuff. Like, you really have to be a strong communicator, and you really have to be able to kind of extract the needs and get to like the roots of problems, from like an analysis business perspective. And then you have to be able to encode them either in your data models, using your data warehouse. You have to make sure you have the right data available. You have to make sure it's high quality. That's stuff that like a typical data analyst might not do. They don't necessarily focus on like data quality and making sure that data is available. They're really just using the data that they have and trying to make the most out of it. So analytics engineer is like delivering that high quality data to the analysts, that they can then use to answer a lot of the business questions. So it kind of involves looking forward and thinking, okay, what are the data analysts actually going to need from the business? What are the questions that the business are asking? How can I produce or find this available data to get these analysts what they want and to answer their questions, essentially? Um, so hopefully that explains a little bit of what an analytics engineer does. Again, like, they are trying to, they're the middleman. They are talking with the data analyst, making sure the data analyst has all they need, but they are also working with data engineers to make sure they have the data actually available, the data is high quality, all the expectations about the data uh, are met, that kind of stuff. So, and common skills for analytics engineer, data warehousing, you have to be able to like architect a cloud data warehouse, and figure out how that works with like different data ingestion tools, with transformation tools like dbt. You need to understand like data modeling principles, that kind of goes along with using a tool like dbt, or even sql mesh is now a big one. I haven't really used sql mesh much or at all. But I'm hoping to test that out soon, because I am just interested in what all the buzz is about. And I feel like there hasn't really been a big data transformation tool on the market in a while, that's really like disrupted things like dbt has. And dbt has some little friendly competition, which I think is always a good thing for a space, because it just ends up making both tools better and solving people's problems, which, is always a good thing. SQL, obviously, I think SQL is a must for any data career. So that's just like kind of a given at this point, but understanding how to use SQL along with like a transformation tool like dbt, and to make like your code more reusable, to make it modular, to just make it more efficient. That's super important. Zach Wilson recently posted a really good video on SQL and like the different layers of knowledge of like how to actually use it, like the basic functions and stuff, and then like taking it a step further and understanding optimization and how to actually optimize your SQL with things like query plans, with indexes. Um, so that's a really great resource for something like that. And again, like communication skills, it really will take you far. And I think that's something that I've really learned a lot in my last role. Is just like being able to extract the needs from the business, because it can be hard to do. It can be easy to take everything at face value, but it's really important to kind of get to the root of like what a stakeholder is asking from you. They could be asking something and actually need a completely different solution than what they're asking for, and it's kind of your job to like get to the root of what is this actual problem that they are trying to solve. Um, and not just doing the thing that they ask for, which can be hard to do, especially when you're early on in your career. It's hard to push back because you're like questioning, should I be the one to push back or should I just, do what I'm told? But I think that ends up making the biggest difference in your career and a team is pushing back and, fighting for your expertise and to do things the right way. I guess that's like another thing. I think analytics engineers come in to a data team or begin work on a data team at like a really pivotal time when data teams are trying to scale their infrastructure and focus more on quality just rather than like trying to get things fast. Like an analytics engineer is really focused on quality and scalability in the long term and not just like quick solutions, which with data analysis, data analysts, I think a lot of it is finding quick solutions to get like an answer that might be 75% accurate, but getting it fast. And of course, that serves its purpose, like that is needed. But if they're like the same questions happening over and over again, or you're measuring the same metrics, those need to be able to be scaled long term. And that's where the analytics engineer comes in. Okay, so what is the difference between an analytics engineer versus a data engineer versus a data analyst? So I like to think about my past experiences. So I started off in data engineering at Capital One, and I specifically was doing DevOps data engineering, which, is different. There's a lot of different types of data engineers, just like there's a lot of different types of data analysts. It kind of depends on the type of company you work for. The more enterprise, the more specialized you are most likely to be. So Capital One, huge company. So I was specifically DevOps for like a very small part of the business, the commercial side of the business. And with that, it's a lot of you are essentially serving like other engineering teams. You're not talking to the business at all. You're um, serving software engineers, essentially, ones that are building products that you're supporting. Especially with DevOps, like you're helping them put that code out into the world in a secure way where bugs don't come up and all that kind of stuff. So with that, very technical heavy, communication wasn't that big of a deal because we worked with product owners, product managers very closely. They told us exactly what you need to do. There's no like back and forth with the business or even with them because they're just translating those technical requirements directly to you. Whereas with analytics engineering, so it also could be a little bit different because for my analytics engineering roles, they were for smaller companies with very small data teams. So that obviously works a lot different than a huge enterprise company. So take that what you will. So like my experience with enterprise versus startups versus data engineer versus analytics engineer is going to be a little different just because of the nature of the companies. But there I was really building like the data pipeline from the ground up. Like I worked very closely with head of engineering, the software engineers that had been working on the platform for 10 plus years. And they are just at a point where, okay, we need to actually like implement a proper data warehouse. We can't just like be using the Postgres database all the time. And we actually need to use some real like data tools. So that's when implemented Snowflake, designs that whole architecture for how we wanted to like work with dev and prod in Snowflake. Implementing a tool like dbt for transformation to help move metrics out of the BI layer. I think that's a common problem that analytics engineers solve is like trying to take all the code that's in the BI layer and figure out what data models they need to build to make it more scalable. Like at Wink, the code in Domo, which do not recommend that tool to anyone. The code in Domo was kind of crazy. It was just all over the place. There was repeat code, so like if logic ever changed, there probably would have been no way that we would be able to update it in all the different places. Whereas a tool like DBT, you write the code once and you can like essentially plug and play that different code in different spots, which is the whole point of DBT. Ends up making the code way easier to scale and maintain, and ensures definitions are the same across the board. And some of the dashboards that we had at Wink would take like 24, 36 hours to run, which should not happen, obviously. Any analytics engineer is probably rolling over hearing that, because that is an absolute nightmare. But that's exactly why you shouldn't be doing all of your transformation logic in the BI layer. So moving that over to DBT, creating scalable data models, like ones for sessions, I think is like a common one. Different marketing ones, different like account or customer details, all of that stuff should really be a proper data model in DBT. And let's see, what else did I use at Wink? Prefect was also a tool. My job at Wink was fun because I got to completely create the data stack from scratch, which is a rare but a fun opportunity for any analytics engineer, because you get to choose the tools that you think work best with the company, the budget, the skill sets. You're not just given a tool set that someone else decided like 10 years ago that's probably outdated, that probably doesn't make sense for the skills on your team and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that's a luxury that you can find as much anymore, but if you do find a role where you get to create the data stack, that is definitely a huge learning opportunity and a lot of fun. Hey P, you're making another appearance? Hey buddy, how you doing? All right. Is a BI engineer and analytics engineer the same thing? And the answer is it depends. This is another common question I get. I don't know how long the term business intelligence engineer has been around. I don't really like the term business intelligence. I don't know. I just think it's kind of outdated. Obviously, we still use like BI for BI tools, but I don't know. It's not like, I think analytics engineer is way more encompassing, because to me, business intelligence engineer just infers that you're working entirely in the business intelligence BI tool. And I don't think, I don't want to say that someone that works completely in the BI tool isn't an engineer, but you definitely have less creativity with your solutions. I'm sure there are BI tools that help power, like that. I guess you can create pipelines and stuff in, but I just don't think you have as much flexibility with the different technologies and tools that you can use. So yeah, the biggest difference is that it depends. In my head, I think of it as like, okay, this person is kind of like a data analyst with a little bit more engineering skills. Maybe they're thinking about scalability and data modeling a little bit more than your typical data analyst. Like they're really focused on scaling the BI tool, but not necessarily the data models or data sets behind the BI tool, if that makes sense. So, but if you are job hunting, I think it is important to search for both business intelligence and analytics engineering roles, because sometimes companies use them interchangeably, and you can just really assess what you think the title should be based off of the job requirements. I think it's so hard in the data world. A lot of a lot of job roles, like, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of times it's the recruiters that are determining the titles of these positions just based off of different factors, and they're not necessarily involved in the everyday of a data team or understand, the nuances of the different roles. So it's important to look for the requirements and then just fit your skills and what you're offering with the requirements of the role rather than looking at titles. I think focusing on titles can be very dangerous because they're not always accurate, You got to go with the requirements. So what are the key skills needed for analytics engineering? I kind of already mentioned this: data warehousing, data modeling, SQL, building pipelines from ingestion to orchestration, communication, documentation is a big one. Like, make sure you're following basic best practices. I think it's a hard one. A lot of times you either want to build fast or build well, and you kind of have to find that middle ground, especially if you're working at a smaller company. You If the business needs something, it's probably not going to go over well if you're taking like 6 months to build a data model. So you kind of have to balance out, like, okay, I can get them 80% of what they need in 2 months, for example. I'm going to go that route rather than spending 6 months to make it completely perfect. That's just part of the analytics engineering game. All right, my coffee ice cube is melting. I think I'm going to end that here for today, but thanks for joining the first episode of the Friday Grind. I hope you enjoy your coffees, enjoy the rest of your Friday, have a great weekend. Eventually, I'd love to start bringing guests onto here. I found that there's a real void in the market for kind of like intermediate to advanced engineering learning resources. So I'd really like to fill that also for like my own selfish needs. Like, I want to bring in experts in certain spaces of analytics engineering for like those mid-level engineers that really want to get to the next level and really want to up level their tech skills, because I've realized it's really hard to find good resources, like written by people that have like 20 plus years of experience in the data space. So if you know of any, definitely shoot them my way. But I feel like everything is very hands off and very just not as like deep deep and technical as I would like. I've been looking for a lot of like data modeling resources, of course, like reading through Kimball's book, but also like project management resources in the data space and just like how to think about a project and also how to make your data models like indestructible against like anomalies in your data. I think everything out there is very like reactive rather than proactive. So that's just something I've been thinking a lot about, and I want to find experts in that space. So if you know any, definitely tag them and I will be in touch with them. But I would definitely love to have more conversations with experts on these live streams. So again, hope you enjoyed this. If you have any feedback for me, definitely leave a comment, and thanks for joining.